it looks like we are live. So awesome. Uh, all right, let me uh, get this going real quick, and we'll start the webinar real quick. All right. So hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on the copywriting crash course. Give me just 1 minute. We have to get some stuff set up from our end. Let me actually get out of here real quick. And just 1 second, everybody. We'll be starting very soon, so make sure you say hello in the comments. Let us know where you're coming in from. And we'll get started in just a second. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you. All right, okay. Hello, everybody. It looks like we might be having an issue or two, but we're going to try to get things sorted out as we go along. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming here today. I'm very, very excited to present this webinar to you today. If you've been with our webinars, if you've attended any of our webinars in the past, then you'll be in for a treat because this is some brand new stuff. We are actually launching a brand new copywriting course. It's a crash course in copywriting that's about 4 weeks long. I'll talk about it in a little bit, but that's where today's webinar is going to come from. And this is a topic that I really, I love talking about. I love teaching about it. It's a really lucrative and versatile area of writing. If you've heard me talk about blog writing in the past, this is going to be very similar. It has a very similar career trajectory to it, if you will. And there are lots of opportunities for copywriters out there. Now, whether you've heard of copywriting before, whether it's new to you, whether you're an expert in it, I think you'll find something here. I've tried to include a little bit of something for everyone. And if you do have any questions about it throughout the webinar, be sure to ask in the chat, and we will have a Q&A section at the end to address all of the comments there and all the questions. So, and there are no stupid questions, so don't feel pressured to do that. Don't worry about asking the right questions because we're all equals here. So anyway, let's get started with the webinar. Now, I mentioned that this is coming from our new copywriting course. This is something we've wanted to do for a while. And we recently we've finished this course up, and we're going to have it live to new members of Writing Launch. And I just wanted to talk about it really quickly, let you know what it's going to be about. It's going to be a 4-week course full of in-depth instruction about copywriting. And this course is going to be a lot like our No BS course, except it's going to be for copywriting. So if you're familiar with our courses, you know that our No BS course is our introductory flagship course for beginners into freelance writing. And so this is going to be our course for beginners who want to do copywriting. And it's really for all skill levels, but it's definitely geared more toward newer copywriters. So if that is something that you're interested in, if you watch the webinar today and you're interested in doing copywriting or trying it out, then this course is definitely going to be for you. And we also have a great community. I just needed to shout this out because we have so many awesome members. And it really is a blessing. We have our member Susan here, who was talking on our Facebook group about being published in Chicken Soup for the Soul, which was a great moment for all of us, and we're all very proud of her. So Susan, if you're watching, congratulations again, and I hope to read it when it comes out next month. And of course, we're going to have some one-on-one training options, and we've offered this in the past in some ways, but this is going to be true one-on-one training with me. You'll be able to schedule appointments and stuff like that with me. So if you are interested in any of this, definitely stick around, and you'll learn more about it in the days to come. Now, let's get started with the actual webinar, and today is going to be sort of a basic overview of what copywriting is and what it looks like and how you can use it. And so if you've never heard of copywriting before, or if you're just new to it and interested in it, then this is definitely going to be for you. So let's just start with a baseline definition of copywriting, because there are a lot of definitions out there and it can be a little confusing as to what copywriting is and what it's not. So I'm going to go over that today. A good definition is that copywriting is the act of writing copy for marketing and advertising purposes. And let me stop there actually and kind of break that down. Copywriting is just, simply put, the act of writing copy. That makes sense, right? But copy as a term is mostly used as a synonym for just content or text. It's the written word basically, but it's in a very specific context. So for example, let's say you pick a novel off the shelf at your local library and you open it up. What you're reading, as the bulk of that book is not copy, it's just the text of the novel. But maybe on the back cover, you see that little blurb that talks about the book. That would be copy because it's meant to market and advertise the book to the reader picking it off the shelf. So that's one example of sort of what copy is and what it isn't. I'll give more examples later on, and we'll look into 4 great examples of different types of copy, because copywriting is such a large field, and it is sometimes difficult to talk about because it's such a massive umbrella term. But I hope that I give you a good enough idea today of what it is. Now, it's not just any sort of writing. It's a very specific type of writing, and specifically it has a specific type of goal. And that goal is to persuade the reader to take an action that benefits a business or an individual. So again, let me break that down. The ultimate goal of copy is usually to make people buy things, but it can also be to make people click on something, or to make people download something, or to make people walk into a shop. It can have different goals, but they all have a goal of making the reader take an action, and then that action is going to somehow directly benefit the business or the individual for whom the copy was written. So let's say you're writing a menu for a restaurant, right? That would be a good example of copy. You're writing that, to advertise the meals to readers, or even let's say you're writing an advertisement in the local paper for a restaurant, and you're trying to get people to be interested in the restaurant and to come in and to try it out and to dine there. So that's the action that would benefit that restaurant, and so that's the basic idea of copy. And there are many types of copy. We're going to go over, like I said, 4 different types today, but there are so many. And of course, we're going to go over much more of that inside the course itself. But for today, we're going to look at 4 great examples. But I want to cover as much ground as possible today, so hopefully that will be insightful for you. So now let's look at 4 different types of copy. Now, I'm going to tackle these one by one because I have a lot to say about each one. So let's start with email content. Now, if you've ever gotten an email from a company, you know what email copy is. It's usually used for promotions or newsletters or things like that. And I have an example here. This was an email I got from Panera Bread, which is a restaurant chain here in the U.S. if you're watching from abroad. And if you're watching here, you may have eaten here before. And I got this email. I thought it was a really good example of copy because it's easy to identify that this is sort of a description, and it's something that a lot of you, I think, have seen before, so it's probably a familiar example. Now, of course, the goal of this copy is to get you to try the Mediterranean veggie sandwich, which I personally do enjoy with some modifications. If so, yeah, I thought this was cool too because it's just a snippet from the email. Of course, it's not the whole thing, but you see the image at the top. There's that big headline. There's the description, and this is a lot of what copy is condensed into one little square. Because, like I said, the goal of copy is to sell something to people, to get them to do something. This is always in sort of a branded context. It's always for a business, for an individual, something like that. So this is a great example because it's just a regular email you would get, but you may have not identified it as copy before, but now next time you get an email maybe from Panera Bread, you will kind of identify that as copy, and you'll start to understand what they're doing with this. So of course this is just an advertisement for a sandwich, right? But it's trying to get you into one specific sandwich. It's building interest for not only the sandwich also, but the restaurant. So the goal is to have you come into the restaurant and try this, or maybe order it for takeout. And so this is just something you would often see in an email. This is great email content. It's quick and to the point. It has enough description for the sandwich to get you interested, but then if you don't want to read all that, you can just kind of skim it and get the general idea. So this is a great promotional email type of copy. And you also see this in newsletters, and also sometimes if something like you'll get emailed a coupon code sometimes for a special deal that's maybe only for email subscribers or something like that. That's a really good example of email copy. So basically, anytime you get an email from a business, you're looking at copy, and of course that there's always that goal there. So now let's move on to advertisements. Now I just copied and pasted a Facebook ad that I found, and you've probably seen Facebook ads like this before, but of course there are so many types of ads. I mean, you can have ads on websites, you can have social media ads, you can have print ads, of course, even billboards can apply here, maybe flyers, things like that. There are all kinds of advertisements, and this is just an easy example that I wanted to point out because a lot of you are familiar with Facebook, and at least know how it looks and works and things like that. So this is a really good example too because it's, again, for a specific goal. It's from this company called WeWork, and it's a co-working company. So the idea is they rent out workspace and office space and conference room space. And so this ad is very much geared toward that specific crowd, and that's something else that I want to talk about. I'll address this a little bit later, but all good copy is directed at a specific audience, right? So like let's say with the Panera Bread email example, that would be an example of an email that's geared toward maybe people who are vegetarian or vegan, or who are more health focused, or who just want to try a new sandwich. So that is a large group, but it is a specific group. So it's not just advertising to literally everyone. It is sort of a subset of the general public and a subset of their customer base. Now with WeWork, it's a very similar type of thing where they're targeting a very specific group of people. They're looking for people, maybe freelancers like you and I, who need office space, who want to work somewhere, maybe who want a co-working space, or maybe who just need an office space for administrative reasons or something like that. That's the sort of crowd that they're focusing. Because if you, let's say you're a welder, right? If you scroll past this ad, you're not going to think twice about it. You're going to instantly know that's not for you. But if you're any kind of worker, freelancer, any remote worker, any sort of position like that, it's going to catch your eye. Not only because of the nice image that they have here, but because of the copy. So it immediately, lets you know what they offer: private offices, daily workspaces, conference room, all the benefits your business needs to grow. And of course, this is for the London specific branch, but I've seen a lot of ads that are specific to other places. And of course, with the way these ads work, they will target based on geography. So for example, this is usually not going to be shown in the US. It'll probably only be shown in England. but nonetheless, it's a great ad. And actually, the fact that it's so localized proves that they know who their audience is. So this is a great example of a social media ad. And a little tip here is you'll see at the very top, if you can make it out, it says suggested post, and that's Facebook's way of letting you know that you're seeing an ad. But otherwise, this just looks like anything you'd see in your Facebook feed. So if you're familiar with Facebook, you know that you can just be scrolling and see all your friends post and all that, and then just see an ad in the middle of it. So it's a very organic, natural placement of the ads. So sometimes you don't even know that you're seeing them, and so the goal here is to really make the copy as natural as possible. So this is very laid back copy. It's not overly businessy. It's not overly salesy. It's just enough to really build some interest. So now let's look at another big example, which is a landing page. Now, you might not be familiar with landing pages, but you may have seen them before. Generally, it's a single page on a website that is meant to sell a specific product or service. And this is really popular among businesses that sell courses like we do, or businesses that sell certain products, maybe like an ebook or something like that. Usually it's digital-based products that that are used in landing pages, and the reason they're called landing pages is because they sort of help the customer land the sale, as it were. Now, the screenshot here is from a Black Friday Cyber Monday sale we did a couple years ago, and this is just a snippet of it. You can still see the full page on the website if you look around, but this was a deal we had where we were offering a year of membership for a bundle deal, and we had a whole page set up for it because we wanted to make the offer very clear, and it was a very special offer, and we wanted to talk about it in detail for maybe people who didn't know about our company Writing Launch, or who didn't know if it was for them or not. And so this is just a snippet of the video that we had some copy in that clearly states our goal. And I chose this still frame because even though this is a video, so of course the copy is going to change, I thought this was a pretty good, succinct summary of what we do. We help writers become professional writers, and then a little claim the offer button. And this is all copy. It's a different form of copy. It's not the same as the ad or as the email, but it's still content that's designed with the goal of making the reader do something. So in this case, we're hoping to get people interested in the membership, and so that's what the entire page was about. And landing pages are typically quite long. They're several scrolls long, so you have to scroll for a while to get all the detail. But the upside of that is you do get a really richly detailed page. And landing pages are some of the most popular types of copywriting. A lot of companies use them, especially newer companies and startups. So this is definitely an area that you'll want to pay attention to if you are interested in a copywriting career. And now finally, let's look at product descriptions. Now, you've probably seen these a lot. They're used on commerce sites a lot. Anywhere you buy a product, you'll see a product description. And I've got an example here from a shoe site. So, it just has some colors of shoes that come in this model of shoe. And then it has a little description below it that tells you about the shoe. It talks about the materials mostly, and it talks about, like the build of the shoe and everything like that. So it gives you the information that you might want to know before you make the purchase. So, when you buy a shoe, you want to know what it's made of. You want to know what the durability is like. You want to know what it offers to you. And all of that is contained in this little snippet here. It talks about, the rubber sole, that it's made of vegan materials. It has, synthetic lined upper, all these terms. And usually when you look at product descriptions, you will see a lot of product-specific jargon, and that's to let you know, specific details about that product. Now, of course, here the goal is to get people interested in buying the shoe and helping people understand if it's the right shoe for them. So with all of these, the ultimate goal is a purchase, except for the Panera Bread email, which and the ad to some extent. These are both, trying to get you to click on something. So, for example, the email, hopefully you might click on that and place an order online, or you might go into the store and order it. With the We Work ad, they want you to click on that ad and make a booking on their website. And then, of course, on the landing page that we did, we want to hopefully get some people interested in purchasing the membership. And with the shoe description, the goal is to have the person buy the shoe. So usually copy is meant to either get people to buy something or to click something. And there are exceptions to that rule, but generally it's going to be one of those two. And usually it's a sale, but it can be a click a lot of the times if it's something online, something digital, because when you're buying anything online, you have to make a series of clicks. It's not just you see an email and then it's a one-click buy or anything like that. You have to do research. You have to go through some product pages and things like that. So, these are 4 different examples of copywriting. And I think you can sort of see how they're all related, even though they're different. And you'll notice also that all of these types of copy are very similar in tone. And that's something I'm going to go into a little bit later, is the specific tone of copywriting. And if you've seen copy before, you know that it has sort of a distinct tone to it. It's not like you're reading an article. It's not like you're reading a message from a friend. It's a very unique sort of writing voice. So we're going to get into that later. And like I said, if you have any questions on this, please do ask in the Q&A. We'll get to that at the end. Now I want to talk about why you should consider copywriting, because I know we have a lot of creative writers in the audience, and a lot of people who are interested in freelance writing or maybe writing books or something like that. And so I think a really important question to ask is, why even consider copywriting? Because it is a lot more business oriented. It's a lot more salesy, and I know that a lot of you might not be comfortable with that idea. Whether it's because it feels kind of weird to imagine yourself doing, or maybe it just is so foreign to you that you're more convinced to maybe stick with something you know. So I want to go over a few reasons why you might want to consider copywriting. First of all, copywriting is a new skill set that you probably don't have right now, and you'll always be able to use it. And that's the thing about copywriting, is that it's evergreen. Companies are always looking for copywriters, and I mean always. It's been, copywriting has been popular ever since the first written ad was created way back when, and it definitely became more popular in the 20th century. And of course now it's just everywhere, because everyone has a business, everyone's trying to sell something, and so there's a lot of demand for copywriting now. I know a lot of you like the idea of getting published in different blogs and online publications, and I love that, and I think it's very easy to do. But objectively, there is more demand for copywriting because it's such a huge field. It's always in demand, and you can get a steady stream of work as a copywriter. And even if you don't have any copywriting jobs for a while, you'll still have that skill set with you always to be able to use. And I've always been able to make use of my copywriting skills. And I've also found that when you study copywriting, you become a better article writer. So there's definitely a symbiotic relationship there. And speaking of getting copywriting jobs, another thing to consider is that copywriters usually get paid more than other types of writers. And of course, this goes from, there being more demand for it. And of course, when I say that, I mean there's demand for good copywriters because, there are a dime a dozen bad copywriters. That's definitely a problem that's still sort of plaguing the writing industry. But copywriters are generally some of the most high paid. I've gotten paid up to $1.25 per word for this type of work. And I know Jacob said he has gotten paid up to $4 per word for this type of work. And I know many people who have even gone beyond that. So it's definitely not impossible to get these, super high paying jobs. And even on average, I find that the average copywriting job that I take on pays anywhere from, let's say, 2 to 4 times as well as some of the article writing jobs I take on. So the average is already much higher just as a baseline. And occasionally you'll be able to get really good high-paying jobs that are these crazy amounts that you could only dream of, because there's a demand for good copy, and if you can supply that, you're in a really good place. And of course, that's where the skill set comes into play. So in short, if you want to write for a career, and if you want, and by that I mean freelance write for a career, you absolutely need to consider copywriting. And I think it's also something that you want to always have sort of in your back pocket, because as a freelance writer, you have to wear many hats. And so, like, for example, in my own career, I find myself going between a mixture of copywriting and article writing. And so I stay pretty competent at both fields, because I'm always exercising my writing muscles in each sort of field. And I found that that's a really good balance. It's afforded me many good opportunities for jobs, and for opportunities for growth and networking and things like that. And it's been really positive. And yeah, it's something that I definitely wish I would have started sooner, because I think I started out with article writing, and then I sort of moved into copywriting. And I would like to do more copywriting work now too, because there's always more to be had, and it's such an interesting field. So whenever I have some free time from writing articles, I look for copywriting jobs. And so yeah, definitely, if this is something you're looking at doing for a career, if you're here because you really want to write for a living and make good money off of it, and I'm sure that's many of you, then you absolutely definitely need to consider copywriting. Even if you haven't, even if maybe you've been writing for years and you've never considered it, I would really strongly suggest that you do so, because it's a wide open field of possibility. So let's talk about some prerequisites that you might want to have before you start studying copywriting and becoming a copywriter. One of them is understanding your audience. And all of these steps are going to play into a little formula later on, so keep that in the back of your head. The first is understanding your audience. And this is big because, of course, like I said, the goal of copywriting is to help the reader take an action that is right for them. And let me also clarify that, because this was a good point that was brought up by another writer. Is that copywriting, the goal is not just to make people buy something. It's not to try to force people into saying, well, you want this. It's about helping people make purchasing decisions that are right for them. So what you want to do is, let's say you're advertising a product. Let's say that sandwich that we looked at from Panera Bread. The goal of that email isn't to try to get everybody through the door to buy that sandwich. It's to say, hey, we're offering this sandwich. If this looks like something that appeals to you, that you would find tasty, come in and try it. And it's more of an invitation to buy something, rather than saying, like, buy now, buy now, buy now. So it's not this manipulative thing that some people make it out to be, at least when done well, because there's a lot of bad copywriting out there for sure. But ultimately, understanding your audience is going to help you when it comes to writing copy, because then you'll know, okay, what does my audience need? How can I meet their needs? How does this product or service that I'm selling meet their needs? And so in that way, it's very business focused. And you probably already noticed, if you've been with our webinars before, that I'm talking very differently from how I talk about blog writing or freelance writing in general. So yeah, the key really is understanding your audience, because without that, you won't be able to connect with them at all. You won't be able to know whether your product is good for them or not. So this is a really important step. You also need to know how to communicate value, because with any product or service that you're selling, there's sort of a central point of value, right? Like the point of value of that, as we say, the value proposition of that sandwich, for instance, it's that it's a tasty, healthy sandwich. And let's say about the shoe, the value proposition of that shoe is that it's a well-built, appealing shoe that will last you a long time. So all of these are value statements, value propositions, and you have to, as the copywriter, you have to sort of tease those out sometimes and bring them front and center. And you have to showcase them in such a way that is appealing to the reader and their needs. So for example, if I was looking at that shoe, let's say I didn't need a shoe. Let's say I wasn't in the market for a shoe, but maybe I was just bored, or maybe a friend had sent it to me or something like that. It wouldn't really grab my attention because I'm not in the market for a shoe, but I would still be able to see the value of that shoe. And so let's say I was looking for that shoe. If that were the case, if I were looking for a shoe to buy, then I would be able to read that description and understand, okay, this is what the value is. This is what, the benefit I will get if I buy this shoe. And we will go into a little bit of the features versus benefits debate later on. And keep in mind, don't worry if there's some of this that you don't understand. We do go over it in great detail in the course over the 4 weeks. But if you do have questions about this, let me know, because I know there can be a lot of confusion when you're introduced to this subject. But I've tried to make it as straightforward as possible. So understanding your audience, being able to communicate value, and also knowing some sales basics. I think a lot of people think of sales as like a dirty word. And a lot of people are hesitant to go into sales because it has all these negative connotations. But when at its basics, sales is just knowing how to convey information to a reader. It's knowing how to sell a product in a way that is, like I said earlier, more of an invitation. It's saying, hey, we have this product. It does these things. It has these benefits. If that sounds like you would be interested in it, please do consider buying it. We think it would be a good fit for you. And I think the whole trend of companies being kind of shady with their copy has gone away quite a bit. Companies today are all about transparency, or at least they purport to be. And so, but usually that in the copy area, that does really come across as very transparent. And I've never worked with any company that has tried to sort of take this ham-fisted sales approach that's like, you must buy this. If you've seen any actually infomercials are a good example, because with infomercials, it's just a half hour or 20-minute long sales pitch that is just meant to get you to buy this thing. They want you to call now. It's a very sort of hitting you over the head with the idea of a sale. And that's sort of the opposite of what copy is now. It's more of just an offering instead of something that they're trying to shove down your throats. So it's not, it's changed a lot, especially in the last, I would say, 10 years or so, just because the culture of the average company is so different now from what it used to be. So if you are, if that's one of the things that's maybe stopped you from doing copywriting, or has maybe just put you off the idea, I hope you'll be happy to know that has changed quite a bit, and it's really no longer like that, which is a very welcome change. Now I want to spend a few minutes breaking down a piece of copy. I found another Facebook ad for a subscription service called Nature Box, and just the idea is that they deliver snacks to your doorstep. And the reason I wanted to break this down is because there's a lot going on here. This is a really, really strong advertisement, and it employs a lot of the techniques of copy. So I want to use this example to teach you a little bit more about how copy works. Now, the first thing that you'll want to look at this to consider about this is the format, right? Facebook ads have a very specific format because they all look the same just because it's the standardized format. So that limits the copywriter to a certain extent. For example, in the description at the top, there's only a certain amount of words and characters the writer can put in, and that's especially true for the at the bottom with the headlines and the subheading. There's a limit to what you can put in there. So you really need to, use words that count, and you need to waste no space. You have a very specific goal here, which is making the reader click, right? You want the idea is that you'll see this and say, oh, a Nature Box, that sounds cool, and you'll click on their page and maybe learn more about them, and then eventually click through to the point where you will get a sale. And I think this particular ad goes right to the NatureBox website. So this would go right to the sales page, maybe a landing page, but I think probably just to like a product page. And it would, be a continuation of the offer shown here. And then you would just buy that. So that's the ideal sort of journey that you would take in as the customer. But I want to talk about the format a little more generally. Because Facebook ads are so tight in terms of what you can put, it really is a sort of every letter counts deal. And of course, there are different formats out there. Like Twitter ads will have a different format, and of course, landing pages have all sorts of formats. So sometimes format isn't an issue, but for this specific advertisement, it is. And I just wanted to call into attention how well this handles it, because just reading over this, it's no nonsense. It's really tight. It's really strong. It opens with deliciously wholesome snacks delivered monthly. Even just reading that, I already know what NatureBox is, right? I don't have to think about it. And of course, the image helps, but even without the image, I would immediately understand that, I'll get a monthly delivery of good snacks. That's all I need to know. So that first line in just 5 words tells you everything you need to know. It's really, really smart copywriting, and that's sort of the level that I think all copywriters should strive to get at. And some of this is really easy to do, some of it's a little harder to do, but it stands that this is just what you want to do. And then it goes on to say you can try a free sample of 5 of our tastiest snacks. Just pay $7.95 for shipping. And so of course that's sort of a just pay shipping type of deal, which is still a good deal. I do think it's a little misleading with the word free, just because you have to pay for shipping. I mean, they do clarify that. And I will give them credit for not capitalizing free, because I've seen a lot of these ads where, people will say, oh, capitalize the word free to get attention. And so people will focus on the word free, and then when they see the $7.95 for shipping, they'll feel a bit robbed. But here it's pretty straightforward, and I think it's really transparent. They give you a free trial of something that would normally cost however many dollars more, but all you have to do is cover shipping, and that is a standard free trial setup. So I think that's fair enough. If it were me, I would probably use the same copy or maybe omit the word free, but in all honesty, in this specific case, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But it goes on to say, try a free sample of 5 of our tastiest snacks, just pay $7.95 for shipping. Again, that's a really short sentence, but it tells you everything you need to know. You're going to get a sample of a product that would normally cost, however many dollars. It's going to be 5 snacks, and you have to pay $7.95 for shipping. So, and you can even at that point begin to mentally kind of calculate the worth of the offer. So you'll think, okay, $7.95 for 5 snacks. That seems pretty comparable to what I would get at the store. And looking at this picture, it seems like the quality of the snack is greater than what I might get at the store. So all of that put together really gives you a strong image. And of course, the actual image here does help. A lot of copywriting does go along with images, and it's a really harmonious relationship between text and image in the world of copywriting. And that's something you have to get used to as a copywriter, how to feed off the image. But you'll notice here that the image doesn't tell you, it's not redundant. It gives you new information because it shows you what some of the snacks look like. And then it has that free trial, big circle to get your attention. And then let's look at the headline and the link description here. So the headline goes, you're going to snack, get smart about it. And that, of course, is a very good copywriting technique of sort of appealing to the reader's habits or wants or desires. So in this example, everyone likes to snack, so why not be smart about it? Why not get some healthier options? And then the little description beneath it continues that. So it's the same thing above, where the first sentence is like a general description, and then the next sentence goes into detail. It's the same thing here, because you see that headline of you're going to snack, get smart about it, and then you see why it's smart. Our snacks contain no artificial colors, sweeteners, or flavors. So that's a very good example of of how the copywriting can be very tight but very descriptive at the same time and appeal to the reader's needs. And of course, for that to happen, they obviously know their audience. Their audience is people who are maybe healthier eaters or who want to eat healthy. That's such a large group, but it still is a targeted group. So they know their audience very well. They know the types of people that will click on this ad, and they've tailored the ad to those people. So just to quickly summarize that, one, the ad is focused on getting the reader to take an action. That's a click. It describes the features of the product and how those translate into benefits for the reader. So for example, some of the features are that it contains no artificial colors, they're healthy, and then it talks about how those are beneficial for the reader. And so it says, you can get smart about it. These snacks aren't as bad for you as others might be. And that's something I wanted to mention earlier, is that you'll often hear in copywriting people say, well, the feature of a product is not what you want to be selling. You want to be selling the benefit. So let's use the snack example. The feature is that it has no artificial colors, but the benefit is that it's healthier as a result of it having no artificial colors. But and some copywriters will tell you, sell the benefits. And there's a lot to that, but I think that it's best when you talk about what the features are and why they're beneficial. So you do both. You describe the features of the product and then how those translate into benefits with the reader, or for the reader, sorry. And of course, it appeals to the reader's needs. It talks about the ideal reader would need maybe a healthier option, or maybe just not even a healthier snacking option, but just a healthier food option, and this could tick that box for them. So like I said, they know their audience, they know what they're about, they're tailoring the advertisement to that reader and to their needs. So that's sort of a quick summary of everything we've gone over so far, and we'll kind of come back to these ideas a little later. Now, we are going to send you a couple of bonuses, as always. And the first one I wanted to mention really quickly is 3 copywriting tips for beginners. Because if you really want to write great copy, like the Nature Box ad I just showed you, you'll need to know some, expert tips and techniques. And so what I'm going to be doing is getting a guide together of 3 of the best copywriting tips that I know. These are coming straight from our course that we have coming up, and you're going to get it in your email inbox absolutely free. We're going to be sending it to you tomorrow, so definitely keep an eye out for that. And if you are new to this, or if you have questions, I think this will definitely help you in terms of demystifying the process a little bit. Now, I want to go over really quickly a 3-step copywriting process that is essentially, because whenever I talk about complicated topics, I like to try to break them down, because they can often be very approachable if you view them the right way. And so I think that's what hopefully what this will do. The first step is to know your audience, right? And we talked about this earlier in terms of the ad, in terms of the other types of copy that we saw, is that copy is all about the audience, right? It's almost matchmaking. You're trying to find a match between the product and the person, and you want to make that as clear as possible. And to do that, you have to know who you're selling to. So every business, every product has a certain audience that they want to sell to, right? Few products are sold for everybody, maybe like tissues or something, everyone can use those. But say something like, a fancy blender, that's only going to apply to a certain subset of people. So you need to know who your audience is, who would be interested in this specific product, what do they like, what are their needs. And there's one lesson in our new copywriting course that goes into extreme detail on all of this, and there's all these questions you can ask about, what people want and what they need and so forth. So it's a really involved topic, because you need to get to know your audience so well. It's one of the most vital parts of the entire process. And we saw that play out with the ad and the copy earlier, of how knowing your audience can get you really far. And of course, you need to know your product. You need to not only know, what it's made of and what the features are, but also, like I said, how those translate into benefits. You need to understand how you can link the product with the audience. And then, of course, you have to sell the product to the audience. So it's a very synthetic process of knowing the audience, knowing your product. You put that together and you sell your product to your audience. It's really as simple as that when you break it down. And I think it's easy to see in hindsight where you can get to a place like that ad, for example. That the Nature Box ad knew who their audience was. They knew what their product was and why it was valuable. And then they went ahead and created that ad for that specific audience. And this is the essence of a lot of copywriting. And of course, there's a lot more detail to it than this, and there's a lot of little things that will kind of take you from 0 to 60. But I really wanted this to be an introductory lesson because I know that copywriting might not be something that a lot of you have experience with, or that maybe you just have never considered before. So I wanted to break it down as much as possible. And again, I just wanted to take a look at that 3-step process in action. Of course, knowing the audience, knowing the product, selling the product. This is a great example. I just want you to read over the ad again and think about, as you're reading the ad, think about, who the audience is, what the product is, and then how they're combined, to where the product is appealing to the audience. Because I think it's one of those, it's almost like rereading a mystery novel where you go, oh, okay, that makes sense now. That person did this. It's the same thing here. You understand a little more why this works. You understand, okay, they know who their audience is because they're saying this, get smart about it. They know what their product is about because it's saying this, and so forth. Now, earlier I mentioned that there is a specific sort of copywriting tone, and if you've looked really closely at the ad, you probably have noticed that. So the second bonus we're going to be sending to you is about developing your copywriting voice. Now, this is a lesson that's straight from the new course itself, so you're getting insider information here. And I think this is a really valuable lesson because it talks about how you can take your natural writing voice and then change it, or not change it, but modify it for the uses of copy. So. Often what you'll end up doing is creating a completely new copywriting voice. So for me, for example, the tone that I take for copywriting is a little different from the tone I take for article writing, but it just depends on the context. And it's really useful to have. And even if you're not interested in copywriting at all, I think this bonus will still be of value to you because it does talk about how to modify your tone and your voice for different situations and different contexts. So I think you're really going to like this bonus. And of course, as always, we'll be sending it to you absolutely free to your email. You just need to keep an eye out for it. And sometimes we do have issues with the bonuses going to your spam or junk folder, so be sure to check there if you don't see it. I just wanted to throw that out there. Now, I've been seeing in the chat a lot of questions about finding clients, and I want to address some general information. If you still have questions, please feel free to ask them, but I wanted to give you just a few overviews of ways to get clients. Now, if you've attended one of our webinars before, you know that I've talked about how to find clients for freelance writing and how to find publications, and this is very similar. So one way you can go about this is by just creating a job search routine. And this is something I've talked about a lot before. The basic idea is that, you find places that advertise copywriting jobs. You find places that work for you. You kind of test the waters a bit, see which sites and which job boards are beneficial, which ones aren't, and then you build a routine based around that. So, you'll apply to these jobs every 3 days or something like that, or maybe twice a week on Tuesday and Friday or something like that. And you keep that up, and you treat it like just a normal routine to increase its efficiency and its effectiveness. That's a great way to go about it. With some copywriting jobs, it can be a little harder to find this way because like a lot of the best copywriting jobs, you have to know people to get. And that's just sort of a byproduct of the industry itself because it's made out of so many connections. And sometimes, for example, you might have to be an in-house copywriter at a company. So you might have to, go to a jobs page and apply to work at that company. Of course, you can work remotely, but the process just looks a little different. So, you have to look at maybe different types of job boards. You have to look at, networking a little bit, which is the second approach you can take is just networking. And I think we have one or two lessons on this, and it's a combination of networking and something called lead generation, which is getting people to find you and to be interested in you. And networking is like the opposite of that, where you're trying to reach out to people and get them interested in your work. And this is a really powerful way of getting copywriting jobs specifically, because since there's such a high demand for good copy, a lot of businesses, would rather go with someone that they know and trust. So it's kind of a matter of, getting your foot in the door, getting to know the right people. And it sounds really intimidating, but it's a lot easier than you might think. And you can also, in order to network, you might need to have some referrals. And referrals are great. I've talked about this a little bit before. This is something that I've been able to use successfully, as I've had, a client who I might ask for a referral from, or they will just give me a referral, and I've gotten a lot of good work that way. And so that's a form of networking that you can use. But of course, networking can take so many forms. Like you can network in person, you can use LinkedIn, you can, use your personal network and see who needs work done. And that's a very powerful tip in and of itself. I remember we had one case study of a writer who got a large amount of jobs, I think very high paying jobs, just because she asked, her friends and family, if they knew anyone who needed work done, or if those people needed anyone, if they knew anyone who needed work done. So, don't be afraid to use your personal network, or even just people you come into contact with every day. Maybe it can be as simple as your hairstylist or your accountant or something like that. Or maybe just someone that you know. This is a very, very powerful tip. So definitely try it out if you're looking at copywriting. So now I want to move into the Q&A really quick. We only have about 10 minutes left together, so I'll try to get as many questions done as possible. So let's get started. Let me check out the Q&A. I had a question about finding clientele, which I kind of covered. Finding copywriting jobs. Yeah, I hope I've answered the questions about finding copywriting jobs. If you have further questions on that, please do ask them, because I know it's a multi-stage process. We have a question about copywriting jobs and whether they provide layout and images. And usually it'll be one of two things. Most often they don't, but it depends on, I will say it depends on the job. If you're writing like for a product description, usually you will be provided with an image. If you're writing for an email, you might never even see any images, but they might just put an image to the text. Generally, I would say for at least email copy, the text comes first, so any images are probably added after that as a supplement to the text. If it's about let's say it's a landing page, sometimes you will be able to see what the landing page looks like beforehand. You'll work with the client or your contact at the business to make that happen. Same with the product description. You'll usually be able to see an image of the product that you're going to sell. Occasionally you won't, but it really depends on the type of copy, and there are so many types of copy that I didn't even go over in the lesson, because there are just so many different forms. So it really depends on the type of copywriting that you're doing. But I would say generally, if you're not seeing images, or if you're not provided with any images, you don't need to worry about it, because the company will either add them, or they might just not be using any, or they're just not that important, because the text is taking kind of first place here in the text to image relationship. But that's a good question. Let's see. We have a question from Tiffany. She asks, I want to know which companies would hire someone who does not have a lot of experience in copywriting. And that's a good question too, because I've talked about sort of how to get copywriting jobs, but I haven't really talked about who to look for. My advice would be starting with your personal network. Starting with people like I mentioned, because that is I think the best entry point, because when if you know somebody who needs work done, you don't have to get your foot in the door. You already have an established relationship with them, and then they can give you a job and a good review, a good referral maybe, and you can build from there. Another way to do it is to leverage other types of writing that you have. So, for example, sometimes when I apply to copywriting jobs, if I don't have any, let's say, recent work in copywriting, I'll just send an article that I've done, because the skill set does have a lot of overlap. But to be a copywriter, you need to have a specific mindset, and of course I just show that throughout the way I talk, the way I conduct myself, the way that I write my emails. So it is very situational. So I would say that if you have any experience, any published work as a writer, that is good enough to get started, as to use as a reference point. And then once you build up copywriting work, you can use that instead. So that's a very good question. Thank you, Tiffany. Well, here's an interesting question. I've noticed that most copywriting jobs require bachelor degrees. Any sites that prefer to start with newer copywriters? In my experience at least, I don't think that's overly true, in that I haven't seen a lot of posts that require that. I think, if you want to work for like a Fortune 500 company, of course, it's going to be something they're looking for. But I generally anymore, people don't really mind if you have a degree or not. Like for example, I actually have an English degree, but I've never really used it as a selling point. Like, it's never gotten me a job. So I think people these days are really more interested in the quality of work that you do instead of what your background is. But if they do ask for it, what I would say is, if you don't have it, you might just want to apply anyway, because if your work is strong enough, it will speak for itself. And of course, like I said, most jobs that I'm seeing on the job boards that I visit at least don't require that. But it just is sort of an issue you might have to deal with on a case-by-case basis. Here's a good question from Beth, who asks, do you have any comments on finding a niche for copywriting? Do you think having a niche is worthwhile, or is it better to be more generalized? Well, I think it's sort of a two-pronged approach, because copywriting is such a specific field of writing that once you know how to write copy, you can apply it to almost any any field, any niche, any product. It's a really versatile skill set. That said, I think it is valuable to have a niche, but it's surprisingly not as important as maybe article writing or something like that, because when you're writing an article, it's a very kind of specific type of content for a specific audience, and copywriting is like that as well, but it's generally aimed at a wider audience, because generally speaking, there are more people who want to buy a product than who want to read a publication. So I definitely think that it's important to to have a niche, but it's not as important. So for example, some of the copy that I've written has had to do with my interests. Some of it hasn't. Some of it has been a little outside my niche area, but I've been able to understand, what the product was, why it was beneficial, and then who would be interested in that. And as long as you understand that, you can write copy for just about anything. And that's another reason that copywriting is so versatile and so flexible, is because you can do it, with almost any product, even if you haven't had experience with it. Of course, that helps, but the option is still there if you're interested in it. Let's answer two more questions and we'll call it a day, because I don't want to keep any of you for too long. Here's a really good question. What are the growth and career prospects for someone who is just starting out in copywriting and has no previous experience in the field? That's a very good question. I would say, it's about the same sort of it takes about the same amount of time to become a really successful copywriter as it does to become any other type of successful writer. It might take a while to really land the opportunities you want and get up there, but there are a lot of great jobs available right off the bat. If you have no prior experience, obviously I do recommend starting small. Reaching out to small businesses is always a good way to do this, or maybe if you know someone who runs a small business, because then you can have some one-on-one interaction with the owner or owners of the shop. things like that are what you want to be setting your sights on, or maybe doing some copy for, let's say, individuals who run a business, what we call solopreneurs or solo entrepreneurs. Um, I definitely think don't bite off more than you can chew, because you'll be able to handle more as you go on. But I would say, if you keep it up, if you build a process and you really, hustle and work for it, I think within, the first year or so, you can really be seeing some positive results. Um, let's do one more question. Let's finish off with a really good question. Um, here's a good one to finish off with. Any tips for marketing yourself if you are completely new to copywriting? What skills should you highlight in the absence of an existing portfolio? Another good question. In terms of the portfolio, I touched on this earlier, but if you have related writing, I would go ahead and use that. Like for me, I have one portfolio that I use for all my jobs, just because there's so much overlap. And at the end of the day, people want to know that you're a good writer. If you can prove that, that's all they're interested in. In terms of marketing yourself, what I would recommend is definitely just getting used to the idea of reaching out. I think that's one of the most important things you can do, because a lot of writers are scared to do that, and understandably so, because there's a lot of risk involved. It can be a really nerve-wracking process, but ultimately, it's one of the most rewarding things you can do. Even if that just means emailing someone you work with and saying, hey, do you know anyone who needs copy written for them? It can be as simple as that, really. And at first, don't think too hard about it. You don't need to be putting yourself, out everywhere. That's not the best idea, but I would say just getting used to the idea of reaching out to people is the best way you can prepare to market yourself. And then once you do that, once you get some work done, some jobs completed, you can start looking at things like making a website, getting people to come there, going more on sites like LinkedIn and social media and things like that. But I think that's all quite down the road for a new copywriter. So when you start out, just, like I mentioned earlier, just get comfortable with the idea of reaching out to people and taking advantage of your personal network. And so I think with that, we will call it a day, because we've been together for about an hour now. I really, really hope you have enjoyed the presentation today. Thank you for sticking with it. If I didn't get to your question, please do send me an email at support@writinglaunch.com, and I will answer it in the next day or so as I get to it. Thank you so much for joining here today. I hope you're excited for our upcoming course. We're going to be sending you some information about that. And don't forget that we'll also be sending you the 2 free bonuses over the next couple of days. So definitely keep an eye out for those. And like I said earlier, be sure to check your spam or junk folder if you don't see it, because sometimes it does unfortunately get filtered there. So once again, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you had a really good time. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you have a really good day and a good week ahead. It's going to be, I think, rather lovely. So yeah, thank you very, very much, and we'll see you soon.